I'm Sarah Colvin here with Melissa Chartrand. And, you know, Melissa, you usually get the pleasure of speaking to the artists in our arts and culture segment, but this week I had the pleasure to speak with the artist, and it's Susan French Overstreet, who has a very kind of interesting business that she does here in across Cape Cod.
She sure does. As you said, she refers to it as performance art, and she goes to functions, mostly weddings, but I'm sure anniversaries or bar mitzvahs, anything and everything that you can imagine. But she actually paints. And then you get to take, I mean, how fabulous is that to take home?
A wonderful keepsake.
A wonderful keepsake, absolutely. And I think it's fascinating for the guests that would be there to watch what she's doing and then to have it and have that memory. It's remarkable. And the fact that she can capture it so quickly during that event.
Absolutely. So it's amazing. And she let us in on some of her secrets and also really what drives her as an artist. So I'm looking forward to sharing this interview. So let's go now to today's Arts and Culture segment here on Barnstable This Morning. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our weekly Arts and Culture segment. Today we are talking with local artist Susan French Overstreet. She is a painter who has some beautiful artwork, is also has a unique business here as well. Susan, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you very much for having me, Sarah.
So, Susan, let's talk a little bit about yourself as an artist. Talk to me about how you first got into creating artwork.
Well, I don't remember ever not being an artist. My mom was an artist, and I have a sketch I did of Perry Mason while watching television when I was 5 years old. And so I always had paint art materials around. I went to George Washington University, and I studied there for international politics, but I also took many, many courses, particularly with Frank Wright, who's a realist painter, and I learned a lot there, and I also studied at the Corcoran School of Art. I took many classes also at the Art League School, which is in Alexandria, Virginia, and there's many well-established artists there that I studied with, Michael Francis, Danny Dawson, sculptor Chuck Johnson. So I've been doing art for many, many years. I sold a lot of art in Virginia, and now I'm up on the Cape living here full-time and starting to sell my art again here. I consider myself an impressionist from that school of thought. I love to capture the mood, the emotions, realistic in the sense that I capture the likeness of people, but it's more important to get the spirit of the occasion. So it kind of naturally evolved into this events performance artist where I capture the scene that's going on.
Wonderful. And Susan,
yeah.
I want to talk a little bit more about your work before we get into the
Sure.
performance artists, because I really think that's fascinating. But we've been showing some of your images up on the screen, and it certainly does have that impressionist flair, definitely capturing that energy and mood. I think it's interesting that you studied international politics at the same time, continuing your studies in art. Now, did you go right from college to becoming an artist? Did you work in the field of politics at all?
I did. I worked for a lobbyist when I was in D.C., and then when my children were young, I got back into art, and I started painting, and I was teaching art in after-school programs and at an art center in Virginia. I also taught women actually at a shelter in D.C., which was a wonderful experience because it was an outlet for them while they were caring for their young children. They could come in and do art. So I've taught all different ages art, and then I did sell my work as well. Then I went back actually into politics again, and I was teaching politics at George Mason University. I was a professor there. But art has always been my passion. You know, many people do different things, and it's funny because I think the politics has actually helped my art, because now I've decided I'm able to do this full time, and all that I learned about studying and observing people in politics really contributes to my passion for looking and understanding people when I'm painting them.
Wonderful. And something that really is key to be able to look and understand people when you're painting them, especially when you are doing your live wedding painting.
Yes.
So how did you decide to come to Cape Cod? Obviously, you said lots of your training was down, kind of down south in the D.C. area. What brought you to Cape Cod?
Well, I grew up in Rhode Island, so I'm a New Englander at heart, always, and always used to come to the Cape as a child, loved the Cape. And I wanted to come back to New England, even though I lived in Virginia for many years. I used to come here in the summers. And I think it's a wonderful mecca for artists, Cape Cod. Not only is the light beautiful, the scenery beautiful, but there's this art history here that's fantastic in P-Town and other areas on the Cape. So there's all these wonderful artists, and when I came back here, I started going to Sarah Hall's class and other art groups on the Cape, and just the art community here is so supportive of one another. And I have to just plug in all my friends at the Geyer Barn that, I paint with, Karen Ryder, Lila Savita, Ron Lindholm, all these wonderful artists who have been so supportive of me since I've gotten back into art. And you really need the community. You do, because it can be an isolating thing to be an artist, and to have other artists around that you learn from, that encourage you, is just a gift. And you have that on the Cape, and like no other place, I just find that this is the place that I want to be.
Certainly. So let's talk a little bit about the live wedding paintings. Of course, Cape Cod is certainly a beautiful destination for weddings. People who live here get married here, as well as people travel here specifically for the beauty of Cape Cod. And, we've got photographers, we've got caterers, and this is something that I have never heard of. And had I known about it, I think during the time that I got married, I definitely would have said, this is something that I might consider live wedding painting. Talk to me about how you got into this business.
Okay, actually, I started this in Virginia. Now I'm continuing to market it here. I did several of them. Somebody asked me, they had seen someone out in California doing a painting of the wedding while it was taking place, and they asked me if I could do it, and I said sure, because I do paint fast. I do portraits, I do people, and so I did it in acrylic, which dries fast. So I'm also that's generally the medium that I work in. So what I did was prepare for it by going and painting the venue before all the people arrive. So before anyone comes into the room, I pick a spot that kind of, I can see the dance floor, I can see tables. And I use the template of Renoir's Moulin de la Galette, at the very familiar, famous painting of the dancers and the people at the table. So that's kind of the idea, this kind of riot of activity that you get at weddings, the energy and everything. So what I'm looking for is to capture the mood, the joy of the occasion, really.
Absolutely.
I get lightnesses, but it's not meant to be a formal portrait.
Right, and it's interesting that you do it live while the wedding is going on. It's not as though you will gather some photographs that were taken after the fact. This is something that you do as it's happening. And
happening, absolutely.
We had an example up on the screen that kind of showed some couples dancing and the tables as you will, and it's not necessarily one scene from the wedding. You kind of paint as you go, correct?
I'm sorry?
Paint as you go?
Yes, I paint as I go. So what I do is I know I'm going to put the bride and groom dancing, so I generally know the area that I want to put them in, and as they're dancing, I put them, paint them in, and then I block out, usually at the table, I put the appearance of both the bride and the groom. I do get photographs beforehand just so I can identify people, but I don't start the painting until, I get to the venue. And then usually beforehand they'll send me pictures of the wedding gown, the bridesmaids' dresses, flowers, any information I can gather beforehand, so I'm kind of prepared to know who to place in the picture. And then while it's unfolding, beside the wedding party, usually people will come up to me, they'll surround me, and they'll say, oh, you need to get, the grandmother, that's her. And they point to different people, and people are always very gracious. They come up and they'll stand for a minute so I can get their likeness quickly. So it kind of is happening as I go. It's as the event unfolds, this thing comes together. And there's a lot of pressure involved, obviously. But sure. It's also, I love it. I love the energy. I love being there, part of the scene, and people seem to really, really enjoy having an artist there. It's so unusual. People are like, wow, this is so unusual.
Absolutely.
So,
and what a wonderful keepsake for the bride and groom, too, to be able to have that to display in their home as a memory of their wedding day.
yes, yes.
So, Susan, we're
Yeah.
just about out of time, but if if people do want to get in touch with you, if they'd like to see your work, I know you've got a great website, or perhaps they'd like to talk to you about maybe hiring them or hiring you for their wedding. What's the best way for them to get in touch with you?
Well, they can call me directly. That's usually the easiest way. I do have the website, liveweddingpaintings.com, but my number here on the Cape is 774-722-9279, and that's always the best way directly to get a hold of me, because I book. It's usually weddings are on Saturdays, so they book up quickly. So
Absolutely.
I like to talk to people directly rather than try to go through the website, because I don't want to ever disappoint anybody with a date.
Great. Well, we know that can be busy. Well, Susan, it was wonderful talking with you and learning about your work, and I appreciate you taking the time to talk with us today.
Thank you so much, Sarah.
Thank
okay.
you. Have a great day.
Take care. Yeah,
Bye-bye.
you too. Bye-bye.